Usually can. Oh, there I am. How the eyes. All right. Are we live? Yes. All right. I'm going to give a few minutes for everybody to start rolling in here. Yesterday was amazing, guys. I know so many of you are first-time cold plungers, and you actually, no pun intended, but broke the ice yesterday. So congratulations. This is so awesome. We have big special guest that was supposed to be on today, but for scheduling purposes, they got moved to tomorrow. So you definitely want to be here tomorrow. We got both special guests coming on tomorrow to give you some words of encouragement. I saw some really creative cold plunging on. You guys were tagging me on some amazing cold plunges. Who was the woman in Mexico? Renata in Mexico couldn't get one of the plunge pop-ups, so she actually went and got a beer tub and did her cold plunge in a beer tub. I saw people doing them in cattle troughs. That's what I do when I'm in Colorado. I went to Tractor Supply and I bought the $165 cattle trough that you feed cattle out of, and I just fill it up with glacier spring water. Love the creativity, guys. Lots of bathtubs going on. I saw barrel cold plunges. So you guys have gotten really creative. So here's what I want to do. In the next 24 hours, at the end of the challenge tomorrow, I'm going to give away a Plunge XL tub. So the Plunge XL is the one that I use. It's the $7,000 big mama. It's got the integrated motor. It's got this, the top so you can put it outside. It's the big white one with the 45-degree slant in the back. If you saw Ryan from Plunge yesterday, it's the one he has at his headquarters that he was in. I am going to give it away to the most creative post that you tag me in cold plunging over the next 24 hours. So if you get in there with your kids, or if it's husband and wife for the first time, or you've got a funky plunge like a cattle trough or a beer tub, I want to see it. And the most creative cold plunge, I'm going to give you a $7,000 Plunge XL tub, and I'm going to ship it right to your house for no cost. All right. We got a bunch of giveaways today. I want to make this as exciting and impactful as possible. I'm not just reserving this for my VIPs. I'm reserving this for anybody on YouTube, on the Facebook group. Just tag at Gary Brecka, just my first and last name. Show me how creative you're getting with the cold plunge. I want to see you, your families, your husbands, your wives. If you've got a funky creative plunge, like a beer tub or a cattle trough, I want to see it. I'll pick the most creative. I'll post and thank you. And I'm going to send you a $7,000 Plunge XL. I got a ton of swag giveaways today. I've got a ton of plunge pop-up giveaways today. One lucky winner is going to get the ultimate human flexible. They can't keep these things in stock on Amazon. It's the hottest item in the world. It's an ultimate human flip-flop. We're going to give a bunch of those away today too. So I got a bunch of questions yesterday. I had my team kind of group them. So I just want to address what I thought were maybe the top 5 most commonly asked questions about cold plunging. But most of all, I really want to thank you guys for giving me your time, your trust and confidence, because the next 2 days is going to be amazing. And yesterday, I know we had thousands and thousands of first-time cold plungers. And then in our VIP group, I got to have a lot of direct feedback with folks, and I heard some really incredible stories about how cold plunging has changed people's lives. Remember, you don't have to spend any money to be a part of this cold plunge, other than if you have a bathtub and you got to go to 7-Eleven and get a couple bags of ice. You can also do it in a cold shower if you want to start that way. I got some really interesting shower photos posted yesterday too. So I'm just excited to see so many people getting fired up to take the plunge. So we talked yesterday about the 5 big benefits of cold plunging, right? And one of them was about elevating mood. And people said, what's the science behind, elevating mood? And remember that when we expose ourselves, when we stress our body, we talked yesterday about hormesis. When you stress the body and it returns by strengthening, right? I mean, the same concept of exercise. You tear a muscle, it grows back larger, and therefore you're stronger after exercise because of muscle hypertrophy or muscle hyperplasia. The same thing happens in the human body. And, when we do these hormetic stresses, we're not trying to make ourselves adapt to the stress. We're actually trying to short-term stress our body, shock the body, and then take the stress off. That's where the benefit comes from. It's like if somebody hit around the corner and went boo every day that you came into the office, but you knew they were hiding around the corner every single day in the same place, then it would no longer scare you. Your body would no longer respond to that stimulus. So with cold plunging, there is no evidence that colder is better or longer is better. And, you know, a lot of people are really excited to hear this. So 50 to 55 degrees, maybe 48 to 55 degrees, 3 minutes minimum, 6 minutes maximum. That's all you need, guys. You do not need to be in the 30s. You do not need to be in the cold plunge for 15 or 20 minutes. I've actually seen cold plunge challenges where they challenge people to stay in longer. You know, longer is not better. It's like anything else. You know, more is not necessarily better. The longer you stay in, the higher the risk of actually dropping your core body temperature. And we don't want to drop our core body temperature. We actually want the peripheral vasoconstriction to save our organs the way that we would if something happened natural. We slipped through the ice, we fell underneath of the ice. We would want our veins in our periphery and our vascular system to constrict, to push that warm blood into the core, force the oxygen to the brain, the liver, the lungs, the pancreas, the kidneys in an effort to save our life. We want to mimic that, and then we just want to get out. We don't want to become cold adaptive. You know, again, we're not trying to become Eskimos. You know, there are a lot of stories out there in the public domain. You can look these up where people have actually slipped through the ice. They've gone under the water in cold water, and it's taken up to 35, 45. There's one that was even documented at 90 minutes underneath of the ice and underwater, obviously unconscious. And they get these people out and they get them to the hospital. They warm them up and they survive, and they actually have no brain damage. Why is that? How is that even possible? You can't go without oxygen for more than 4 minutes without sustaining zero oxygen for more than 4 minutes without starting to sustain some mild level of brain damage. So how is it that people can slip under the ice, be under there for 35 or 45 or 50 minutes and get taken out and somehow survive and have no cognitive deficits thereafter? The reason is cold shock proteins and the peripheral vasoconstriction, the activation of brown fat that happens when you get into a cold plunge. You know, the body is just an amazing, very resilient machine. And when we understand how we can tap into some of these hormetic stresses, those of you that participated on my water fasting challenge, what's water fasting? It's a hormetic stress. We put a stress on the body, and that stress is no food, no caloric intake. And how does the body respond? It actually switches into a state of ketosis. It starts to use fat, beta hydroxybutyrate, as a fuel source. And now that it's in this state of ketosis, what happens? The inflammation begins to drop. And once the inflammation drops and you've been in ketosis for a while, what else happens? The body starts to release stem cells. And those stem cells go around and begin to repair tissue. And then when it's looking for food and we're not feeding it, where does it get its food? It gets its food by eating itself. And it eats the most useless portion first. It eats the weakest part of our body first. And what is that? Those are senescent cells, or what we call zombie cells. Senescent cells are cells in your body that are no longer able to perform their function, right? I mean, right now in your bloodstream, you've got red blood cells that can no longer carry oxygen, but they're still living. You've got white blood cells that can no longer mount an immune defense, but they're still living. You've got platelets that can't carry growth factors, but they're still alive in your bloodstream. And so we'd like to get these kinds of cells out of the body and replace them with a younger, healthier version that can actually do its job. It's like having a company full of lazy employees that are still on your payroll, right? We'd like to get the lazy employees that aren't doing their job out and put somebody in that seat that's actually going to do their job. And this is what cellular autophagy is. And we use the hormetic stress of fasting to push ourselves into a state where we're in cellular autophagy, where we're actually consuming senescent cells, and the body actually recycles itself. It takes those cells that are useless and breaks them up into amino acids and feeds them to the skin. It feeds them to the heart. It feeds them to our metabolism and actually creates new red blood cells. It repairs muscle tissue. So a lot of these stressors and a lot of, when I design these challenges, they're number one, designed to be safe. And they're number two, designed to give you the maximum benefit. I try to make them as close to costing zero as possible. And I want the outcome to be really profound so that you get used to challenging the body. You know, if you look at can you bring me one of my my swag boxes? You know, I have a saying. It's called aging is the aggressive pursuit of comfort. And I don't think that there's anything more truthful than that saying. You know, as a population, as a society, we crave comfort. We regulate our body temperature. We regulate our interior temperature. We regulate the temperature in our house, our car, our office. We've been trained to think that we shouldn't get any sunlight, that sunlight is the devil. And so then we put chemicals on our skin to protect ourselves from sunlight. And then we actually have more damage from the chemicals we put on our skin than we do from the God-given sunlight that we should be exposing ourselves to every day. And so a lot of what I try to do when I design these challenges is to teach you that sometimes these stressors that we can put on our body have profoundly positive effects. You know, the body is such an amazing God-given machine that when we actually understand how we can tap into some of the pharmacies that are naturally inside of our body, some of the abilities to improve our mood, improve our emotional state, strengthen our bodies, improve our digestion. A lot of these don't cost us anything. So I'm going to give one of these away today too, by the way. I don't know if you guys can see that. See the ultimate human? It's kind of like a sort of contrast there. I'm really, really proud of the team for building this. But if you get one of these swag boxes, you see right here, it says, aging is the aggressive pursuit of comfort, right? So none of you are aggressively pursuing comfort today. We're actually pursuing discomfort, right? And that's going to help us with the aging process. But what do we got in here? So in here, you get an ultimate human shaker. And then in this shaker seal, so you can actually really mix up those perfect aminos. You get an Echo water bottle. Oh, just all of my favorites. A little mixer here, because sometimes those perfect aminos are a little powdery, so this will help you mix them. I give you some perfect aminos. I give you Baja Gold sea salt. That's actually one of my favorite hacks. Baja Gold sea salt or Celtic salt, because it's got all those minerals in it. I give you my new Ultimate Human bars. That is actually guilt-free snacking or guilt-free meal replacement. I got them in a couple of flavors. And then I'll give you a t-shirt, or for women, I've got the jogging bras and whatnot. So, but aging is the aggressive pursuit of comfort. So none of us are going to age today because we're not pursuing comfort. But these hormetic stresses are just phenomenal for the body. So when we learn to use every few months, 3 or 4 months, to use fasting, when we learn to use sunlight and breath work and grounding to improve our mood and get oxygen into our bodies and exercise our auxiliary muscles of respiration. And when we learn to use cold plunging as a way to elevate our mood, improve our emotional state. Why? Because I'm raising endorphins and raising the level of dopamine in the body. Remember, dopamine is the main neurotransmitter of behavior. Right? Serotonin is the main neurotransmitter of mood. You start to deplete serotonin, you start to dramatically affect mood. You start to deplete dopamine, you dramatically affect behavior. Because when you're dopamine depleted, you engage in dopamine-seeking behavior. So what's dopamine-seeking behavior? Anything that gives you a little dopamine reward. You know, believe it or not, Apple, the iPhone manufacturer, studied the release of dopamine with different wavelengths of light and different stimuli in the phone. And they actually designed the phone to be dopamine addictive. I know that sounds crazy and like it's a conspiracy theory, but it's patently true. Because, you know, when we look at our phone, we go, there's something interesting in there. There might be something cool in there. I could see somebody get hurt. I could see somebody do something really astounding. I could find out how to fix my relationship. I could find out how to raise my kids. All of that's just in that little tiny device in your hand. Every time that you open it and interact with it, you get a tiny little dopamine reward. So imagine getting 50 times that by just engaging in cold water immersion, right? I mean, that feeling of just elation, joy, arousal, you know, clear, cognizant, waking energy, good, healthy short-term recall, all because you have high levels of endorphins and high levels of dopamine. So again, when we get into that cold plunge, the first thing that happens is that peripheral vasoconstriction, dumping the oxygen into our core. The next thing that happens is the liver panics. And this is one of the reasons why they link cold shock proteins to the ability to survive extended periods under the water. Now, I pray that none of you guys ever fall through the ice and get stuck under the ice. But this is the reason why a lot of these people were able to survive. It was one of the first forays into the study of cold shock proteins from the liver. They release these cold shock proteins. They scour the body of free radical oxidation. They improve the rate of protein synthesis, which is muscle repair, which is why these help you repair muscle. Lin-28A and 28B, which we talked about yesterday, actually improve insulin sensitivity. And you can get all of this in 3 minutes of cold water. Lots of questions about thermogenesis. Remember, two main types of fat. There's different locations of fat around the body. You have visceral fat, you have body fat, but you have different types of fat. You have the white fat that we all know is on our periphery. You know, that's what we're used to seeing around our belly and the flanks of our arms and on the sides of our pecs and everywhere else on our body. That's white fat. But brown fat's a really special type of fat. Brown fat is capable of exchanging a calorie for heat. In fact, the definition of a calorie is that it's a measure of heat. It's the amount of energy measured in joules that it takes to raise 1 cubic centimeter of water 1 degree centigrade. So calories are a measure of heat. So when heat is leaving our bodies, what do you think is leaving your bodies? Calories. There is a cost, an energetic cost to raising your body temperature, and that cost is calories. Your body's going to take calories, your brown fat, and it's going to burn it for energy, and it's going to create heat from that, and it's going to raise your body temperature, and it's going to raise your body temperature beyond the ambient temperature. So if you're in a 75 or 80 degree room and you get in a 50-degree cold plunge and you bring your body temperature, not your core, but your peripheral body temperature down below ambient room temperature, how does your body raise it back to room temperature and then push it all the way to 98.6? It's burning brown fat, right? And so you get this massive caloric expenditure, this major rise in dopamine, this major rise in endorphins. You get this peripheral vasoconstriction, you get the release of cold shock proteins, and it all costs you zero. So it's amazing that we can do this in the mornings. Let's get to some of the most commonly asked questions yesterday on YouTube. I also want to give a shout out to Michael Fullwood. He said, I've been cold plunging for 1.5 years, and I was able to beat my ADHD addictive personality with plunging, meditation, and Wim Hof breathing. I had an alcohol use disorder, and I've been sober for 6 months. Wow. Michael, I'm sending you a pop-up plunge. If you would just, if you're listening, Michael Fullwood, just give your information into the chat to my team, or just connect with my team in the chat, and they're going to send you a pop-up plunge. That's amazing. See, guys, we don't need chemicals. We don't need synthetics. We don't need pharmaceuticals. We need Mother Nature and what God gave us. I believe so much more in what God gave us than what man makes us. And I think that we become a society based on chemicals and synthetics and pharmaceuticals. We've forgotten about the ability of the human body to heal itself, the power that this has over this. And I just get goosebumps hearing some of these stories. Quincy Lennon, does eating anything just before an ice bath change the effects of human biological reactions? Does adding salt to anything for an ice bath either positively or negatively? Okay, so let me handle both of those separately. So the first question was if eating just before an ice bath changes the effects of human biological reactions. I assume what you're asking is, does it change the enzymatic reaction in the and eat that you can affect the enzymes in the stomach, and that is true. It's not true with cold plunging. Remember, we're not lowering our core body temperature. Unless you're underwater drinking the water, we shouldn't be trying to lower our core body temperature. There's enzymes in the body that work on basically something called a lock and key mechanism. So think about a Pac-Man and a slice of cake, right? So that Pac-Man has that triangular shaped mouth. And if you were to fit a perfect triangular shaped piece into their mouth, we call this the lock and key mechanism. This is kind of how enzymes work in the body. Different enzymes have a lock, and the key, the nutrient, fits that lock, and that enzyme is able to degrade it. Those enzymes are sensitive to temperature. So if you drink ice water and eat, sometimes it can affect the enzymatic capacity to break down that food. So this does not happen with cold plunging. Again, we're not swallowing the water and we're not lowering our body temperature, so it wouldn't affect our enzymes or our lock and key mechanism. Does adding salt to anything for an ice bath either positively or negatively? I think what you're asking me is if we add something like an Epsom salt, also called magnesium chloride, or Dead Sea salts or something to our ice bath, would that affect you positively or negatively? I'm not aware of any negative effects. Remember that what's interesting about cold water is that the colder the water, the more gas can be dissolved in the water. There's higher oxygen concentrations. There's higher dissolved gas in cold water than there is in warm water. But with regard to sodium, using things like magnesium chloride or Epsom salts, those are fine to put into your cold plunge. Check with your cold plunge manufacturer to see if adding Epsom salt to your cold plunge will actually destroy the motor, because the fan and some of the rubber seals are affected by magnesium chloride. It kind of cakes around the seal, and it can actually damage the seal over a couple of months. So that's the only downside. When I'm in Colorado, I will sometimes take magnesium chloride and Epsom salt and put it in the ice bath and kind of stir it around because I'm not worried about the motor. Newton, Gary, I'm all in. If I'm currently in Cyprus, Greece, even a cold shower is too hot. No cold plunges facilities either. What is the closest thing that I can do? See if there's a restaurant that'll give you a bucket of ice. See if the hotel will give you a bucket of ice. See if they sell ice they got to have their version of 7-Eleven in Cyprus, Greece. So see if you can actually get ice and put it in a tub. The interesting thing about buying a bunch of bags of ice and putting it in your tub, believe it or not, if you guys have ever done this, is it's good for 3 or 4 days. And it doesn't stay, as cold as the first day that you plunged. Your first plunge will obviously be the coldest, but you'd be surprised how a tub actually insulates that cold water, and it can actually stay nice and cold for 3 or 4 days, again, depending on the amount of heat. But see if you can get ice from a restaurant, see if you can get ice from a hotel, or see if you can get buy ice bags at a whatever the Cyprus, Greece version of 7-Eleven is. But by the way, I'm very jealous. Greece is one of my favorite places in the world. My daughter, Madison, is actually in Mykonos right now. And so she keeps sending me pictures of her and all of her girlfriends having fun in Mykonos, Santorini. I love that part of the world. As a firefighter, in terms of sauna cold plunge combo, do you have any more research on the toxin and mental benefits? Yes. So this might be a long answer, but remember there's 2 types of sweating that the body goes through, right? We have passive sweating and we have active sweating. Passive sweating is where we sweat to reduce body temperature. So if you got out of your chair right now and you went for a brisk walk and you started to sweat, that's your body trying to lower your body temperature. Active sweating is where you sweat to eliminate waste. So if you've ever actually had the cold sweats when you had the flu, you're in a cool room under the covers and 65 degrees in the room, but you're still shivering and you're sweating. That's active sweating. This is where your liver begins to use the skin as a secondary route of waste elimination. And so we've all, unfortunately experienced active sweating because we, at some point in our life, we probably had the flu or the seasonal allergies, and we start to actively sweat. This is the difference between infrared saunas and dry saunas. Dry saunas cause passive sweating. Infrared saunas, some research shows that it can solicit active sweating. So you actually eliminate slightly more waste in an infrared sauna than you do in a dry sauna. I still encourage you to sauna if you can. Contrast therapy is where you go from hot to cold. So again, we don't want this temperature gradient to be super dramatic, right? This is why I don't encourage people to go from high heat saunas that are over 180 degrees Fahrenheit, to really low temperature cold plunges below 40 degrees. That temperature gradient is too much for our cell membrane to handle and can actually crack and fracture the cell membrane. Remember, if you actually look at a cell, in the wall of the cell, surrounding that cell, is what's called a phospholipid bilayer. It's a fancy way of saying an outer and inner layer made of phospholipids, fats, for lack of a better word. So imagine this cell surrounded by a thin layer of fat. And through these ion channels in the cell wall, we move nutrients in and out, right? And so if that fat were really, really warm and sort of liquidy, for lack of better words, and then you submerged it in ice and froze it, the rapid change in that temperature can fracture the cell wall. So if you do contrast therapy, I recommend 20 minutes in a dry sauna, followed by a minute to no more than 3 minutes in a cold plunge. Interestingly, when we did our sleep challenge, some of the people that actually reported having the most active mind at night, they were able to do contrast therapy, even with your home shower, and it dramatically improved their sleep score. And what was the contrast therapy? They got into the shower, they ran it warm, they stood in there and they did whatever their shower business is. Then they turned the shower as hot as they could stand it. They ran it on the back of their neck and down their spine. And then they stepped out of that water stream, turned it as cold as the shower would go, and stepped back into the water for 1 minute and ran the water all over their body. They dried out and then they went off and got in bed. That broke that cycle of what we call catecholamines, which are the really active neurotransmitters in the mind, causing our mind to kind of race, ruminate on thoughts, overthink things. You know, a lot of you have the same condition that I used to have, where you lay down to go to sleep at night and your mind wakes up and your brain just starts clicking through the day, just thinking about the most innocuous little thoughts, depriving you of getting into deep sleep. So contrast therapy before bed is one of my favorite sleep hacks. It's one of the sleep hacks that I use when I'm on the road and I'm trying to adjust to a new time zone. And you're trying to get on to that time zone. So you're either putting yourself to bed very, 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 very late, according to your normal sleep schedule, or you're trying to put yourself to bed early, according to your normal sleep schedule, because you're somewhere in a different time zone. I find that contrast therapy is one of the best ways to break the cycle of the day and start your sleep routine. Huge shout out to Kyle Moranka. Today was my 255th consecutive plunge. I thought it said 255th birthday. I was like, you definitely won the cold plunge challenge. Today was my 255th consecutive plunge. Kyle, we would love to send you some swag. This was amazing. So connect with my team, give them your size, and I'm going to get you out some Ultimate Human swag gear. Ken Galadyan. Ken Galadyan. I hope I'm saying that right, Ken. I apologize. My team's holding it up behind the camera. Ken Galadyan. Can I put chlorine in my 110-gallon portable plunge so I don't have to change the water every day? Try dead sea salt. Try dead sea salt or magnesium chloride. Try that before you use chlorine. Remember, chlorine concentrations are higher in cold water than they are in warm water. There's less evaporation in cold water than there is in warm water, and therefore the concentrations of those chemicals stay high. We talked yesterday about the experiment I did showing how quickly chlorine goes transdermal. So my preference would be that you don't use chlorine, that you use something like a dead sea salt or magnesium chloride, Epsom salt. High amounts of Epsom salt will keep algae and other contaminants from growing. The other thing that you want to do if you're outside is cover your cold plunge if you can, right? Because light and the warmth from the sun will actually help grow algae faster than if you have a cold plunge that's protected from the light. How many bags of light will you estimate is needed for the pop-up to get to 50 degrees? I used 6, and I think they were 6 10-pound bags. I'll have to ask my son when he comes back in here, but I think it was 6 10-pound bags that I got in yesterday. There were 3 of them in there at first. We swirled them around, and then I put 3 more in right when I got in. So my understanding is 6. So that would be, 60 pounds. We have our plunge set at 50 degrees, and it says around 51 to 52 with the Sacramento heat. Should my goal be to get the temperature lower or to stay in longer than 3 minutes? Hubby wants to drop the temp, and maybe we need that because it doesn't take my breath away, but I do have to do breath work when I get in for the first 10 to 15 seconds. So 51 to 52 is fine. If you can get the cold plunge down 48 to 50 degrees, a little bit better, and it will take your breath away. But remember, 3 minutes minimum, 6 minutes maximum. So you can stay in for the full 6 minutes, and that's fine. It does not have to be painful. I don't know when cold plunging became like this contest of willpower to see how cold we could get the water. I really worry about people that get in 35, 37 degree water. I mean, but that cold plunge that I use will go down to 35, 37 degrees. I just don't put it down there, but I have seen all over Instagram, people in 35 to 37 degree water, just a few degrees off of freezing, get in and even take a snorkel and go underwater and breathe underwater for 12 minutes. That is, in my opinion, very dangerous. We talked about it yesterday. Your brain is only this far inside the surface of your skull. It is not good to bake it, and it's not good to freeze it. Remember, we're trying to hormetically stress the body, 3 to 6 minutes, and get out. And we're going to do that every day, and you will not adapt to it every day. It's like if the person that was scaring you every day was in a different place every single day, you would still respond to that hormetic stress. But if they were in the exact same place every day, you would eventually adapt to that hormetic stress. It would no longer scare you. So again, there's a difference between becoming cold adaptive and cold shocking the body. Interestingly, some of the research that people put forward to poo-poo cold plunging and say that it lacks good scientific basis are studies that were done on cold water swimmers. Well, cold water swimmers are already cold adaptive, right? I mean, if you're used to swimming in very cold water and then you start a cold plunge routine, you're talking about a human that has already adapted to the cold environment that is not cold shocking themselves. Now, if they swam in warmer waters and started a cold plunge routine, well, then you would see the physiological adaptation. You would see the hormetic stress. So I think sometimes, we have to look at the study design that's giving us our information. And, there are people that will speak positively or negatively about just about anything. And that's why I'm trying to cut through all the noise and give you guys the sound research and the best benefit with the least amount of time. Is cold plunging for a menstruating woman during menstruation okay? Yes. Obviously, you want to protect yourself from having that, from menstruating into the water. But yes, during your menstrual cycle, it's perfectly fine to cold plunge. Again, I think this is a very good reminder that colder is not necessarily better, right? We're cold shock the body 3 minutes minimum, 6 minutes maximum, and get out. But it's fine during any time of the menstrual cycle. I haven't seen any scientific evidence. There is some evidence against fasting during certain stages of the menstrual cycle, but I haven't seen any evidence against cold plunging during your cycle. So it doesn't matter if you're follicular, ovulation, or luteal. Adam Kandasamy, what's your opinion of just putting your hands in a large bowl of ice and water if people are not able to cold plunge? What's interesting is I saw Dave Asprey talking about this, just putting your face in a bowl of ice water. I personally haven't seen any valid science either way, so I can't say that doesn't work. It certainly would activate what's called the mammalian dive reflex, which is when your face is exposed to cold water. The neurons in your face actually communicate with your brain and shift you from a sympathetic state, fight or flight, into a parasympathetic state, which is rest and digest. The mammalian dive reflex is extraordinarily well documented in mammals. We are mammals, human beings are mammals. We have a spine. And so when dolphins or when whales dive deep into the ocean, not only does the pressure increase every 33 feet, the atmospheric pressure doubles, but the water temperature also drops. That cool water passing over the neurons in their face actually does slow their heart rate and calm them down. So I'm sure that there are some benefits to putting your face and or your hands in cold water. I don't think that you would get a massive peripheral vasoconstriction. I don't think that you would get a release of any substantive amount of cold shock proteins. And I don't think that would activate brown fat. So it might raise the dopamine and it might improve your mood. And it certainly would be exhilarating. But my preference would be, rather than just to put your hands in your face in cold water, that you try a cold shower. If you're not in Greece where it's 80 degrees. Jenny, I'm guessing you can get the same results from just being in a cold environment, but what makes submerging in water more effective? Jenny, that's a great question. So water is 29 times more thermogenic than air. What does that mean? That means that water removes heat from the body at 29 times the rate of air. It is much easier to adapt to cold air than it is to adapt to cold water. So for example, if you walked outside and it was 50 degrees, you didn't have a shirt on, or you were in a pair of shorts, or if you're a woman, if you were in a bikini or something, you had a lot of skin exposed, you walked out much more easily to the loss of heat in 55-degree air or 50-degree air than it can in 50-degree water. Now, I assume you're talking about really cold air. So yes, if you walked out in really cold air, you would get some of the similar benefits. But water will take heat from the body at 29 times the rate. I mean, it's literally stripping heat from your body. In fact, if you've been in the cold plunge and you've ever stayed really still, you actually know that your body actually, when you get goosebumps and those hairs rise, one of the things that those hairs are doing is kind of trapping water close to the skin. And when you trap it close to the skin, it warms up. And if you've ever sat in a cold plunge for like 30 seconds and then kind of moved your body around and you feel the cold water contact you again, That's because that water is 29 times more thermogenic than the same temperature air. You can die in 72-degree water. I mean, there are plenty of documented cases of people that have got hypothermia in 72-degree water. You cannot die in 72-degree air, right? Your body can actually keep that thermal temperature regulation. So my preference would be cold plunging rather than exposing yourself to cold air, unless you're getting in a cryo tank and now you're getting way below zero and you're kind of making up for the difference between the water and the air temperature and that thermoregulation. Alex Padron, how are heat shock proteins different from cold shock proteins beyond the obvious implication in their name? So what's interesting is the cold shock proteins seem to have a lot more research that I'm able to find. There seems to be a longer list of cold shock proteins. If you were to Google total number of cold shock proteins or total number of heat shock proteins, you'll see that there are more cold shock proteins than heat shock proteins. In general, they do relatively the same thing. They scour the body of free radical oxidation. They do improve the rate of protein synthesis. One of the reasons why I tell athletes to get hyperthermic after exercise, never cold plunge after exercise, to get hyperthermic, so raise the body temperature after exercise. If you're going to do sauna and cold plunge, my preference is you do cold plunge prior to exercise and sauna after exercise. I've seen dramatic improvements in recovery in athletes that do it in that sequence. Interestingly, if you just look at basic human physiology, right? When we go into the gym, one of the whole objectives, if we're lifting weights, is to tear muscle, right? It's to actually damage the muscle so it repairs itself and strengthens. So let's say we did a big squat workout, right? And we tore a bunch of our quad muscle. What's the body going to do after we tear that quad muscle? It's going to increase the blood flow to that area. It's going to deliver more oxygen to those muscles. It's going to strip the creatinine, the waste product, away from those muscles, one of the inflammatory factors. It's going to bring more amino acids to that site so it can actually repair the myofibril tissue. So why would we want to shut that process down? So think about it. I mean, there used to be an old attitude, and there's still it's still a very pervasive attitude in sports medicine, is that after intense exercise, we should get into an ice bath. My son, when he was playing high school football, after every intense practice, they would put these guys in ice baths. And I used to argue with the coach and say, look, I want my son to do the ice bath beforehand. And I don't want to strip the blood out of the areas that he's just damaged. I want more blood flow to the areas that have just damaged. So we want to sort of embrace the natural physiologic process, not fight it, right? So if the body's going to send more blood flow there, I'm not going to constrict it and strip the blood flow out. I'm going to enhance what the body's trying to do. The exception to that is injuries, right? Icing an injury after exercise is obviously a very good thing. So if you have a lateral epicondylitis, if you have a medial knee issue, if you have a hip or a rotator cuff or an elbow issue, then by all means, ice that area of the body after exercise. But ice bath post-exercise is not proven to be really effective for recovery. So 10 minutes until we get ready to take the plunge together, guys. If you're just joining us, remember, I am actually going to give away at the end of the challenge tomorrow, I'm going to give away a $7,000 cold Plunge XL. It's the one that I have with the integrated motor and the cover that you can put outside. It's fully insulated. It heats, it cools. You can run it from your app. You can turn the motor on and off. It's got lights in it. I mean, it is the granddaddy of all cold plunges. All you have to do is tag me in a post. I will repost these. Tag me in the post. I want the most creative cold plunge. I want me to show me that your family's doing it. Husband, wives are doing it. Give me a really creative cold plunge. If you didn't, buy a pop-up plunge, but you're using a beer tub or a cattle trough or something else to do your cold plunge, I want to see it. I want to just get people excited about plunging. So give me the most creative cold plunge post. Tag me at Gary Brecka, and I'll select at the end of the day tomorrow, and I'll announce it, and I'll send you a $7,000 Plunge XL cold plunge. So, Dawn says, I participated in a Wim Hof workshop. I've done that workshop too. Congratulations. And did my first cold plunge in March. It resulted in an epiphany. If I can wrap my brain around getting into cold water, then what can't I do? This was very emotional for me. And I noticed that a lot of participants yesterday were commenting on being very emotional. Can you speak to this? Yes. This is, first of all, Don, I just got goosebumps from your post, because, sometimes when I talk about these things, the haters come out online and on Instagram. They say there's no science behind that, and either they say that you're fear mongering or they say that you're making things up. I can tell you that I am a big believer in large data. We have 150,000 patients that we have treated at 10XL. So very often when I put thousands of patients on a certain supplement and I see their blood vastly react the same way, I start talking about that big data. So I don't know that I can point to a specific randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled, published, peer-reviewed clinical trial to prove what I'm about to say. But you can't point to one of those on parachutes either, and I sure as hell wouldn't jump out of an airplane without a parachute. But you see a vast majority of people report a dramatic improvement in mood and emotional state. And why is that? Because when we expose ourselves to cold water, one of the things that the body does to create a sense of alertness and calm is it raises dopamine. Dopamine is the main driver of behavior. When dopamine rises, the body tries to stay in homeostasis. What does that mean? The body likes to be in balance, right? So when our dopamine levels rise, generally the levels of other endorphins will rise. And what does this mean? It means that it improves the entire spectrum of emotion. Sometimes people will get out of a cold plunge and they will experience joy, elation, arousal, an increase in libido. They'll experience these, I call them the hell yeah, I won the lottery emotions, right? Elation, passion, joy, arousal. And sometimes for a lot of people, it's been so long since they feel those emotions that they actually weep. They actually cry. I've seen this happen before. I took a group of people to my Colorado retreat when we did cold plunges and hiked in the mountains. And I noticed that sometimes after getting out of cold plunges, people will get emotional in a good way. It's like a happy type of crying. Again, I don't have a scientific study to back this up. I've seen it hundreds and hundreds of times. But the science behind this would be that this raise in dopamine and rise in endorphins, a lot of people, I feel like so many of us have accepted good, which is the enemy of great. When our life is just okay, or when our relationships are just okay, or when we're just all right, we stay in this sort of mood numb band sometimes for decades. I want to break people out of that, right? I want people to feel passion, elation, joy, arousal, happiness. I want them to feel that rush of endorphins. And sometimes people have not felt that in so long that cold plunge gives them a glimpse of what they were missing, and it causes an emotional reaction. So I have literally seen this so many times. It's unbelievable. I've seen it at these big events that they host here in Miami, people getting out of cold plunges and drying off and just starting to weep with joy. And you ask them, why you're crying? They go, I don't know, but I feel great. So I think that's, the explanation behind. I hope I answered your question. So we got time for one more question before we take a little break and we get back to the cold plunge. So Kelly B, should I be shivering during a cold plunge? Yes or no? Sometimes people shiver, and that's a really great sign. That's a normal reaction. Sometimes they tell you to stay in the cold plunge until you start to shiver. I don't think that we use shivering as a measure of anything. Some people shiver, some actually don't. When I first started cold plunging, I used to get that little shiver when I would get in. Now, regardless of the temperature or the duration, I don't shiver. So again, shivering is actually a really good sign. Your body's reacting properly to cold water. It's also trying to raise your body temperature and trap more water. It actually, when you're shivering too, you see the goosebumps are really, really prevalent. It will raise all the hairs on the surface of your body to try to trap more heat. So it's a normal physiological response, but don't use it as the only measure of having a successful cold plunge. Some people are like, I think I got to stay in so long until I start to shiver. And then they stay in there for a prolonged period of time that's unnecessary because they actually don't get to that point where they shiver. But if you do, if you're one of those people that shiver every time you get in a cold plunge, it's a great sign. So don't be afraid of that. All right, I think we got time for one more question, and then I'm gonna break, and we're gonna do the actual cold plunge. Can my pregnant wife cold plunge? If so, what would the protocol be? Would the protocol be any different? I apologize if you have already addressed this. No, I actually haven't addressed it. That's a great question. My preference would be that pregnant women do a cool shower. The sad thing about pregnant women is that nobody wants to do testing on pregnant women. Right. So just about everything that you see, from toothpaste to laundry detergents to different food sources to every supplement under the sun, says if you are pregnant or lactating, consult your physician before you take this supplement or use this detergent or what have you. The reason for that is there's just no data on pregnant women. Nobody wants to launch a clinical study with pregnant women on anything that could potentially damage a growing fetus. So my preference would be that you do cold shower and not cold plunge, because the rapid loss of heat, I'm not sure what that transmission would be into the uterus and into the fetus. So to err on the safe side, I would say take a cool shower during pregnancy. You'll still get a lot of the benefits. You won't have the risk of lowering the body temperature inside the uterus. All right, so, okay, we're now going to transition to the ice bath, my favorite part. So I'll be off camera for 1 minute. I'm going to make my way to the cold plunge, and then we're going to, shoot out on my balcony. So if you're going to do the plunge with me, let's get into our plunges, and I'm going to cut the camera, and I'll see you back in 1 minute. All right, guys, we're back live. So if you're doing the plunge with me, we're getting ready. I'm going to add a little bit more ice. Somebody asked me how much ice I put in this. So we had about 3 bags. It's a little toasty out here. We're in Miami. So I know a lot of you guys are in other parts of the world, so it might not be as hot. So we're just gonna get it a little bit cooler there. Roll that around. Woo! Nice and chilly. So we're going to go for 3 minutes today. If you want to go for 6 minutes, please feel free to go for 6 minutes. I didn't feel like you guys wanted to stare at my face for 6 minutes in a cold plunge, but I'm going to go for 3 minutes today. Maybe do a little bit of positive affirmations. I am powerful. I am wealthy. I am strong. My body's going to get a lot of benefit out of this. I deserve this. I am doing something good for my body. And here we go. So my favorite thing, my favorite thing is the 4 breaths before I get in. Obnoxiously deep breaths. Remember, we want to engage those intercostals, right? Those auxiliary muscles of respiration. Those are the muscles we use when we sprint, right? And a lot of us haven't sprinted in years. So we can mimic sprinting by engaging our auxiliary muscles of respiration. So we're going to do 4 obnoxiously deep breaths. And on the 4th breath, we're going to breathe all the way in. We're going to hold, and then we're going to step into the plunge and breathe out until we sit all the way down to our neck. At some point, I'm going to dunk my head, get that mammalian dive reflex, let myself calm down in the plunge after that cold water hits my face. So here we go. 4 deep breaths. Ready? Woo! That is refreshing. As Ron Burgundy would say, that is an instant state of euphoria. So all the way down to my neck. There we are. I'm going to get, you can leave your hands out. Sometimes I'll put my hands in. A lot of people have a hard time with fingers and toes. So you can just leave your hands out on the edge of the cold plunge. Or you can put them in. You're still getting the benefits. Keep your wrist in. Keep your chin down, right down on the water. And then, oh, you see my feet? You see my feet in there? So keep your chin in all the way up to your neck. And then here's some of the techniques that I like to use. Hey, can you guys stop drilling over there? I'm running a live cold plunge challenge. And they don't care. So I use 2 breathwork techniques. One is called box breathing, which is a 4-second inhale, followed by a 4-second hold, followed by a 4-second exhale. Ooh, I just got a shiver right there. Followed by a 4-second hold. So it looks like this. And you just keep tracing that circle. We're over a minute and a half. We got a minute and 18 seconds to go, guys. The second one, this is what Ryan from Plunge uses, where he just does a deep inhale and exhales out at twice the length through an imaginary straw. So just a deep inhale, exhale through a straw. Inhale, exhale through a straw. By now, you should be fully used to the cold water, guys. You are way beyond the hardest part. Most of you should feel that not overwhelming urge to get out. We've got about 35 seconds. I'm going to take my blue blockers off and do a little mammalian dive reflex. Woo! That is refreshing. All right, 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. And we're done. Congratulations, you guys. That is amazing. We just got 2,000 people or so through their first cold plunge. Or maybe their second cold plunge. That was amazing. You should feel incredible. And as the day goes on, this feeling will not go away for hours and hours and hours. I mean, it's basically free. If you just did it in a cold shower or your tub with some ice or one of these $120 plunges, you just got a mood improvement, elevated your emotional state. I'm letting the sun hit my body right now. It's just so good, guys. We can do this every single day. Elevate our mood, elevate our emotion, access brown fat, access cold shock proteins, get that peripheral vasoconstriction. My hands are not, and fingers and toes are not even that cold. So that was a successful cold plunge. Remember, guys, you can sign up to be a VIP. We're going to take a 15-minute break, and then I'm going to spend an hour with my VIPs just directly answering more questions, trying to have a one-on-one reaction with you. But if you want a shot at winning the XL cold plunge, the $7,000 Big Mama cold plunge, I'll send it right to your front door. Do the most creative cold plunge post, tag me. I'm going to repost these. I want to get as many people into cold plunging as possible. So the most creative post is going to win. Tomorrow, announce the winner, and I will send that cold plunge XL right to your front door. So guys, thank you so much for participating today. Please join the VIP group. Go to theultimatehuman.com and just sign up to be a VIP. I promise you I'll give you more value than what you're spending every month. to be a part of my membership group. Now, other than that, I will see you guys tomorrow. 2 big special guests. I'm actually going to have 2 cold plunges tomorrow, and I've got 2 special guests joining us. So you definitely want to participate tomorrow. Meet this special guest. You can ask him questions. I just said that it was man. You can ask him questions directly, but I will see you guys tomorrow. And that's just science.